What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Saturday afternoon edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. Finally got my head shaved. The barber came over. She lives upstairs, but she came over and shaved my head, and it's about time. Needed it. It was just bad. Anyway, joining me as always, his Saturday hoodie game. That's an elite one. I have one of those Under Armour hoodies. They are very comfortable.
Yeah.
Iffy, how we doing?
Doing well. Excited for the slate tonight. There's a few interesting lineup notes that we're going to have to get through, but there's a lot of there's a few lopsided matchups, you want to call them that. Nashville and San Jose and Los Angeles at home to Anaheim being two of them, but there's some pretty good matchups here tonight. Like Toronto and Colorado, you got Matthews, who's hotter than hell right now, and McKinnon. It's just been one of the best players in the league, like a Hart Trophy candidate this season. Then you got Dallas and Carolina, which could be a Stanley Cup final preview, although not necessarily with the way Dallas has been playing of late, but two teams near the top of their conference, especially with Carolina's goaltending of late. So you got Boston and Vancouver literally fighting, I think, for the top of the league or amongst the top. So a lot of really good matchups, a couple lopsided ones. Makes for an interesting night because I think, if you can get away from some of the chalk, you can probably get to some pretty low-owned spots with elite players.
Yeah, and I told my wife she lives upstairs. Right now you're upstairs, so I'm just saying the barber is upstairs. Relax. No, you never tell a woman to relax. She's going to come downstairs and drop kick me in the jaw. But the Avs are playing the Leafs, and it doesn't really matter if Samsonov. I mean, Samsonov has been a little bit better lately, but he's given up more than 3 goals in 5 of his last 8 starts still. So, it's a blue line issue. Whatever. We'll get into that game soon. I do like this slate. I just wish the GPPs were a bit better. I don't want to go on a massive rant about DraftKings, but they tell me that the MMA affects NHL, and I say wrong. It doesn't matter what is going on Saturday. It does not affect NHL. We're a weird, tight-knit community, and we will fill the GPPs if you put them out. I see a lot of people awake here. It is 2 p.m., but whatchamacallit? Our boy Daily Frostback is awake. Usually he's unconscious until dinner time, but he's up and early on a Saturday for him. I do like this slate. We probably should get into it. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, but I just want to say thank you guys again for the support via the affiliate signups, the super chats, just sharing the show, liking the show, showing up in chat. You guys really have been amazing. We truly appreciate you. It's been surreal. And I also just want to say, sometimes I think I crossed the line, and then I watched NBA Live before lock last night, and the line in that show is 45 yards. They're 45 yards past the line. I'm kind of curious to follow up with Eric how Chet Holmgren and his wife went last night, but anyway, if anyone else watched that, whatever. I played NBA last night. I MME'd the $4, and I don't know how if there's any NBA players in this chat right now, you guys are fucking crazy. That was nuts. It was just 6 games, 7:30 p.m. start, 8 p.m. start. I had to rerun my Sims close to 20 times. You guys are nuts. Anyway, let's talk some hockey. Toronto Maple Leafs with a 3.3 total. Heading into Colorado, the Avs have a 3.5. This game's pushing towards a 7. Like I said, it doesn't really matter who's in net for Toronto. I mean, obviously Marty Jones is worse than Samsonov at this point, but I guess that's kind of putting lipstick on a pig. They're just all bad in Toronto in between the pipes. Not much ownership. It's an 8-game slate. I was expecting a lot more ownership on Colorado 1 here. 30.7% top 2 stack on an 8-game slate is pretty bonkers considering it's a line with Johnny Drouin. Only 12% projected ownership. And yeah, they'll probably see a fair bit of Matthews, but like again, we'll talk about it ad nauseum. 1, McKinnon's matchup proof. 2, the Leafs penalty kill sucks. 3, Colorado's power play has been just great all year. So usually it's just like, oh, we're going to spend up for Colorado if it fits. This is a night where I'm seriously considering building around Colorado. Now I know Edmonton's on the slate against Dan Vladar, which is another scene, but which we'll talk about. But I do really, really like Colorado 1 here, Colorado power play. I think it makes me nervous, but something Cliffy mentions a bunch to make it more palatable, like a little bit cheaper. I think you can leave off Mikko and put on like Lehkonen. That's something you could do. I do get nervous leaving off an elite player like Rantanen, but if there is a secondary stack that you can fit in with Lehkonen over Rantanen, I think it's something to consider for tonight. Going to the depth lines here, like I'm not super happy with Colorado depth. Now I think the Colton O'Connor Wood line, I don't think you need a full stack. But if it's something like, oh, I'm doing Edmonton power play tonight instead of Colorado, I think you could take a couple guys like a Colton O'Connor or O'Connor Wood. I do worry that sometimes Wood doesn't make it the whole game there, but with Johansson, Parisi, and Lehkonen on the third line, I would imagine it sticks unless they flip-flop one of the guys. So I'm okay with taking a couple guys from Colorado too there. On the Toronto side, Toronto has a pretty good power play. Now, they've been floating people on and off, Marner, Tavares, and it's kind of annoying. And it's annoying in this sense because Colorado takes a lot of penalties, and there is not a lot of ownership here on Toronto. And I think this is a really, really sneaky, which is weird to say for Toronto, because as much as they suck defensively, they've been great offensively all season. Matthews is having an unreal season. I think it's another one of those things where if you're a bit worried who's going to be on the top power play, whether it's Marner, whether it's Tavares, et cetera, I think you leave Domi off the second line and you put in Matthews and you go Matthews, Nylander, Bertuzzi, something like that, because Colorado takes a lot of penalties. Georgiev hasn't been great. They've been giving Justice Anunin a bunch more starts because I think they're trying to get Georgiev some rest. I think it's a good matchup coming back the other way. So, like, I really, really like both sides of this game. Obviously, I'm not, giving you earth-shattering breaking news. It's a 7 total, but I think as much as a good spot Colorado's in, I do think you have to consider the Leafs here.
Yeah, I'll start on the Colorado side because I did write up Colorado 1 in the picks article today. Free to read over at Stokastic.com. Just head on over to the NHL section. What I wrote was, of the 16 teams that are on the slate tonight, Colorado's drawing the second most minor penalties per game since January 1st at 4.1. So they've been getting a lot of power play opportunities. In that time, you mentioned Toronto's penalty kill. Toronto 22nd by shots against per 60 minutes on the PK, 22nd by goals against. Their penalty kill has really been struggling. The Colorado power play, I mean, it doesn't really need a whole lot of introduction. It seems like almost regardless of who's there, whether it was Nichushkin earlier in the season, whether it's been Lehkonen of late, whether they had Drouin there or they didn't have Drouin there, it doesn't matter. Like, they're just tearing people apart. McKinnon, second in the league in power play points. Rantanen tied for third. That's the one thing that makes me nervous about leaving Rantanen off. Now, you can put in Lehkonen and still get the power play correlation, but it just kind of worries me that it is a good power play spot for Colorado, and leaving Lehkonen off, I just don't think I could do it. I think it's fine to put Lehkonen there instead. If it was a worse power play spot, I'd say that's fine. Maybe they donk once on the power play and then Lehkonen can do work down there on the third line. But where it is actually a pretty good power play spot, I think I would prefer to keep Rantanen in. But I really do like Colorado 1. And yes, they are expensive, but there are a whole lot of cheap spots you can go to tonight, right? Like with Eichel and Stone out for Vegas, there's a lot of cheap Vegas lines. Carolina, their second and third lines, very cheap. Like every Calgary line is cheap. Every Seattle line is cheap. The Nashville second line is really cheap. Like there are a lot of different spots where you can go get some pretty cheap fillers, and Colorado 1 really doesn't hurt that much. So I really do like the Avs top line here. They probably will see a fair bit of the Matthews matchup, and Matthews, his line has been by far the best defensive line that Toronto has had. But McKinnon also plays so much that unless Matthews and Marner play like 26 minutes here tonight, which they're not going to, McKinnon's going to get a fair bit of time against the second and third lines as well. So I really do like Colorado 1. I think Colorado 2 is fine as a filler, but at that point, it's like, who are you putting them in a filler for? Like, I mean, Edmonton power play stack, obviously, but unless you're game stacking or Josh stacking, like, I don't see the need to, right? They have been good with Logan O'Connor there. He just came back in that last game, 3.7 expected goals, 3.2 actual goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. I think it would be a situation where I'd be more inclined to one-off somebody from that line. Like, I'd be more inclined to one-off Logan O'Connor. I'd be more inclined to one-off Ross Colton than I would be to just stack all three of them. Because, again, it is a good power play spot, so I want the power play guys if I'm playing Colorado here. On the Toronto side, I think it's a pretty good matchup for the top line. As good as the Colorado top line is offensively, they do give it up defensively as well. Their last 200 minutes together, 2.7 expected goals against per 60. That's below league average. 3.1 actual goals against per 60. That's where Georgiev's struggles that you were mentioning come into play. The Toronto top line, it doesn't really need any introduction. The one thing that worries me is that Mitch Marner's not shooting a lot. I think he even said it. I might have just been kind of joking around, but in a post-game presser, like he said something to the effect of like he was trying to get Matthews a goal at a certain point, and if Marner keeps deferring, like maybe he has like 2 assists and a shot or something like that in a game, but like that's fine, I guess, if Matthews goes completely nuclear. But I'd want to see him shooting more, and he's just not. Like Matthews, I think, again, makes a great one-off here. I think the entire line is fine. I probably prefer the Colorado side because I think it's still neither penalty kill has honestly been very good in calendar 2024. So it's really not that bad of a matchup for Toronto's power play either. But you mentioned all the movement that they've had. Like there was a power play last game where Nylander had like a 45-second shift before the power play, and then they just didn't put him on. So like they're not sticking to the 5-man unit that they were for like the first 45 games of the season, basically for like the last 2 years. They are, if one guy's tired, then they'll sit him. If they think Bertuzzi's probably going to be there, they'll leave Bertuzzi there. If Bertuzzi's not playing well in the first period, then maybe John Tavares takes his spot. Like that is kind of the problem. Marner's probably like he's almost certainly going to stay on the power play. So I would probably just full stack Toronto 1, leave Nyes there because Colorado does give it up at 5-on-5 at 5-on-5. I think Toronto 2 is actually kind of a nice stack here tonight as well because Bertuzzi and Nylander ostensibly do get power play time as long as they don't do anything too weird. The ownership really isn't that high, 4.6%, 3.9% top 2 stack percentage. Only 15K on DraftKings. That Colton, O'Connor, and Wood line is pretty good offensively, but they have been giving up defensively as well. Like they are a line that does get into a bit of a track meet. If you don't want to pay all the way up for Toronto, if you think, Matthews is going to start going cold here or whatever, I'm perfectly fine going to Toronto 2 here, but it's Colorado 1 I like best, and then Toronto 1, and then Toronto 2.
Yeah. This is seven over under to start the night. We got another one kind of close to 7. Vegas Golden Knights with a 3.5 total. Heading into Ottawa, the Senators also have a 3.3. We don't really have Vegas lines, right?
No.
It's kind of annoying. In our lineup builder right now, we have Marchessault, Carlson, and Brendan Brisson, Stevenson, Barbashev, Amadio, Roy, Cotter, Kolasar. Those could be the lines.
Yeah, that's more or less what they had for most of the second half of that big loss to Toronto. But like most of the second half of one game, like that doesn't feel good to go off of. But at the least, it's an early start, so we'll know line combinations before lock.
Yeah, and it's kind of important too because this game's in Ottawa, and I don't know if you saw the last Senators game, whether the the Stars played awful or the Senators played very well, but that Stützle-Giroux line is very, very good defensively. And they're going to go out. I would imagine they match whatever the Marchessault line is. If it's Marchessault Carlson X, it doesn't matter. They're going to go out against that line. So like, I don't have a ton of interest from that point. And you've touched on it that the Senators' penalty kill has gotten better. So this isn't the matchup going into Ottawa it was like a month ago where it's just like blindly stack against and print. I don't love that top line going into the Stützle-Giroux line. I just don't. And they're over-leveraged or negatively leveraged as it is because they're 14-6 with Brandon Brisson there, whatever. And, like, do I want to stack a Stevenson, Barbashev, Amadio line? Like, not really. Like, Stevenson is having one of the worst seasons in the NHL for a top 6 player. Like, arguably. Like, I don't even know if that's, like, much of hyperbole. Like, he's having a terrible season. So I don't particularly love these line combinations unless, like, you get, like, I don't even know what I would stack. If it was like Roy, Cotter, Amadio, like maybe I would have interest in that. Like if Roy has some decent line mates, maybe I'll use them as a filler. But like I know they have a 3.5 total, but their best players are going to be occupied by Stützle and Giroux Joseph, and that line has legitimately been good. So I don't have a ton of interest on the Vegas side. Vegas depth, if there's a line combination that I like at warmups that's different than the lines that we have now, I'll consider them as a filler. But as it is, I think my interest lies on the Ottawa side. Like as crazy as that is to say. Now, I wish Ottawa just loaded up a power play unit and played them 70% of the time. They don't do that. They split power plays. But I don't have a problem going back to Tkachuk, Pinto, Tarasenko here. I honestly think you can just play Stützle, Giroux, Joseph too. Like if you want to leave Joseph off, that's fine. I know Norris scored twice last game, but I don't have a ton of interest in Norris, Batherson, Grieg. I just like, again, you hear me talk about Ovechkin. If Norris beats me again, good for him. You know what I mean? Good for him. I'd rather, find the extra couple thousand and play Stützle, Giroux, or just full stack Ottawa too. So I like, honestly, I don't have a ton of interest in Vegas despite a 3.5 total. My interest lies on the Ottawa side.
Yeah. I'm going to assume that the people that make these lines are just much smarter than me. I was kind of shocked to see how high the Vegas total was with no Eichel and no Mark Stone. Like, Marchessault and Carlson are pretty good, but now they're going to be, the focus of everything that Ottawa has. And like Ottawa has had their defensive issues. We definitely talked about you mentioned that. But, even Marchessault and Carlson don't really have good numbers together this season. Like they're up to like 110 minutes. I even took the Chandler Stevenson time out of their sample to see if it would get any better. And it did, but marginally. 110 minutes for Marchessault and Carlson together, 53 shot attempts per 64, 69 against per 60, 2.1 expected goals for, 2.6 against. Like they've been getting outplayed. And, the Stevenson Amadio line, it's not any better. So this looks like a pretty bad forward lineup for Vegas. Like I wrote up the Tkachuk, Pinto, Tarasenko line for a number of reasons. One, like Pinto and Tkachuk have just been playing well together. That's a small sample, but Tkachuk and Tarasenko together in 100 minutes, out shooting the opposition 73-49 with 6 goals at 5-on-5 play. Like 6 goals in 100 minutes is pretty good. So they have been pretty dynamite. I mentioned that, Brady Tkachuk has no goals in 5 straight games. He's also averaging 4 shots per game in that span. So he's definitely getting his opportunities. Eventually he's going to break through. Pinto and Tkachuk, both on the top power play unit. What I mentioned in the picks article, I actually mentioned it talking about Claude Giroux, but it applies to Pinto and Tkachuk especially, is the Ottawa power play has been much, much better since the All-Star break. 79.1 shots per 60, 9.9 goals per 60. Like, the shot generation is almost more important than the goals. Like, they are creating a lot on the power play and have been for about 8 or 9 games now. Whether that persists, I guess we'll see, but this is not a bad power play matchup for Ottawa either, as Vegas's penalty kill has struggled. We mentioned on Thursday how not having Mark Stone takes one of the best penalty killing forwards that they have out of the lineup as well. Like, he doesn't play as much on the PK as he used to, but he's still one of the best penalty killing forwards that they have. Funny enough, Toronto, I think all their goals were at either 5-on-5 or 4. So they didn't get on the power play, but it is a good power play matchup for Ottawa. I do like the Tkachuk, Pinto, Tarasenko line the most here. I think going to Stützle, Giroux, and Joseph is perfectly fine, but I think that's a situation where I'd be more inclined to one-off, just because this is kind of like Colorado, where I want to get the power play guys into my lineups. But that line has been playing extremely well. 3.1 expected goals for, 4.6 actual goals for, shooting 14%. I mentioned Claude Giroux in the picks article. I think it's 25 points in his last 25 games. So they're fine. I kind of think that Grieg Pinto Batherson is okay as a filler, or Grieg Norris Batherson. You get Norris on the power play. And it's like, if they're getting third and fourth line matchup against Vegas and Stone and Eichel are out, what do those third and fourth lines actually look like? You know what I mean? So I think they're fine as a filler. Like, they're one of those fillers I think you can put with Colorado or Edmonton or whatever. But it is the Tkachuk line that I like best in this game. And I agree with you, like, on the Vegas side, I'm fine with one-offs. Like, I'm actually fine with like a one-off Mike Amadio. He's only 2,800. He's probably going to have to play a lot of minutes here tonight. He actually has decent offensive numbers with Stevenson. It's just that they're horrific defensively as well. That's why it's a good matchup for Ottawa. So like a one-off Amadio, I think is perfectly fine. If you want a one-off Paul Cotter, as long as he's in the top 6, I think that's perfectly fine as well. Marchessault usually gets his shots off, so obviously he's okay as a one-off. I just don't think there's anything I'm particularly excited about full stacking on Vegas, but there are like some cheap wingers that I would be inclined to use, because I still don't think Ottawa's all that great at 5-on-5, especially outside the Giroux line. I just don't think I would necessarily full stack anything, because like you mentioned, Ottawa penalty kill a lot better of late. 3rd in the league by shots against per 60 on the PK since January 1st. Like, it's like a 19 or 20 game span. So they have been a lot better.
Yeah. I miss the days where you could just blindly stack against and print, but sometimes good to actually put some thought behind it. Boston Bruins, with a 2.9 total heading into Vancouver. The Canucks have a 3 total. Again, with this Boston 1 ownership. 12.1% top 2 stack, 11.8% projected ownership. I don't love stacking this line if you haven't figured that out by now. I think one-offing Pastrnak, again, is fine. Two-manning him with DeBrusk is fine. I just don't love this matchup for him. I don't love full stacking this line. You can in MME. I'm not focusing on them in single entry. Second line is all right, I guess. It doesn't really interest me too much. And then you go to the Vancouver side, and no one's playing them again. It's just like broken record. I would imagine the Miller line is going to see some of the Pastrnak line. I actually prefer the Pettersson line here. I know the power play correlation isn't great there. But Pettersson, Lindholm, Hoglander. I guess you get 2 of the guys because they took Brock Besser off the power play for.
I do want to mention, like, because this is an early game, starts at 7 Eastern, but it's in Vancouver, so there wasn't a morning skate. I think for the third period last game, they took Hoglander off the top line and put Besser there, and then also put Besser back on the power play. They could be running Lindholm, Pettersson, Besser, and it could be perfectly correlated. We just won't know until warmups.
Right, and that is a line that would definitely interest me. You actually put like a couple good guys, like better than I like Hoglander. Don't get me wrong, but he's not Brock Besser. You put Brock Besser.
Elias Lindholm's no Niels Hoglander either.
Yeah, he's just kind of a road cone on skates at this point. But like, when they had the Lotto line together, that line was just nitrous offensively. So we'll have to see a warm-ups. As the lines are currently constituted, I think this is an MME game for me.
Yeah. Like Pasternak one-off, yeah, absolutely is always fine. Vancouver, I'd say the one thing that you can kind of hang your hat on for Boston is that Vancouver has been taking a lot more penalties of late. I mentioned that in the picks article. Vancouver up to 3.9 minor penalties taken per game over the last 7 weeks, like going back to January 1st. That is third amongst all the teams on the slate, and Boston does draw a fair amount of power plays. Like they're like 8th in the league in power plays drawn since January 1st. So Boston could get a lot of power play time here. Zacha and Pasternak both on the top power play unit. So I don't mind that. But I'm assuming they're going to put Pius Suter back on the second line. I don't know that for sure. We won't know until warm up. But the Miller-Besser line has generally been very, very good at home defensively. They play a lot with Quinn Hughes and Philip Hronik, one or the other, if not both. It's not a great matchup for Pasternak in that sense. And it's not like there's a lot of ownership savings on that top line, right? Like that's the one thing that's kind of worrying me. 11.8% ownership for Boston 1. Like I get Vancouver. Like Vancouver has looked pretty bad this week. But it's 1 week against an entire season before that, or 50 games before that, or whatever. So I'm going to put a lot more stock into the prior 50 games, in at least defensively. And I think Boston 1 at 12% ownership is a pretty easy pass on an 8-game slate. Boston 2, really not a lot of interest. In fact, Boston's second line has been pretty garbage together, which is kind of surprising because Dan Heinen's not having a bad season. But 75 minutes together, 49 shot attempts for, 70 against, 2 expected goals for, 4 against per 60, 4.9 actual goals against per 60. Like they're getting crushed. That's the matchup that Pettersson's probably going to see a fair bit of here tonight. And I do like the Pettersson line best for that reason. Like him and Lindholm, and then I almost don't care whoever. Like I prefer Höglander on the other side. If it's Besser, great, perfect correlation. If they move someone else up, whatever, I'll use them. If they move McKayev back or something like that, like I'll use whoever's there. But I do like the Pettersson line a lot better, and not a lot of ownership, as you mentioned. A little bit over leveraged at 4.7%, but at only 15,500, I think that's perfectly fine. Boston's power or penalty kill has been improving a little bit, but it's still been like middle of the road for weeks now. So it is the Pettersson line I like best in this game, and I think it's the only line that I really have any interest in stacking.
Yeah, and like that Boston 1 ownership has been pretty consistent for the past few weeks, and I just don't get it. But they've actually gotten ownership in GPPs too, so it's not like there's an error in our ownership projections. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're just really, really big Pavel Zacha fans. That's what it is.
I mean, Jake has his biases with Shea Theodore, and it comes through in the projections. But he did ship with Shea Theodore the other night, so maybe we're just idiots. I'm definitely an idiot. Sign up using the link in the description box below or the chat to get access to the best NHL data and tools in the industry. You get player and ownership projections, the top stacks tools, lines combinations, and the most invaluable part, the premium Discord, which you do need a membership for now. We wanted you to say Ash Deep Baines out loud. Ash Deep Baines, baby. Going all in on Ash Deep. I mean, if he's in the top 6, if he's on the Pettersson line tonight, I'll play Ash Deep Baines. Anyway. Cliffy went through the stuff that you can get. We showed on the show a bunch. You'll get access to it 24/7. You can hop in the Discord. Go about your day. Dallas Stars with a 2.9 total. Heading into Carolina, the Hurricanes have a 3.2. Tyler Seguin is out. Stanky leg, Logan Stankoven, making his NHL debut. Not in the player pool. He's playing with Wyatt Johnson and Jamie Benn. Ty Dellandrea is taking Seguin's spot. Pavelski on the top line. I don't love it. I don't. The stall line's going to see Dallas 1, and that takes me out on Dallas 1. With Pavelski there, compared to with Pavelski away, the numbers are night and day. They burned the ever-living crap out of us the other night with Wyatt Johnson there. But with Pavelski there, seeing Stahl, no, thank you. The second line with Dellandrea as a filler, like there are other filler lines that I'd rather play. Like I think I'd rather play the Josh Norris line, and you know how much we love Josh Norris here. Wyatt Johnson, Jamie Benn, 2-man. Like I wish Stankoven was in the pool because that line would be 11,100 because he would most definitely be min price. But like even then, like they'd probably be negative leverage because people love using shiny new toys named Stanky Leg. So I don't know. I'm pretty mum on Dallas here. I'm not super excited about Carolina either. If anything, it would probably be the Netchus Bunting Drury line or the Jarvis Martinook Stahl line. Like that top line hasn't been great. It just hasn't. So like I think a Jarvis one-off is fine. I think Netchus Bunting 2-man or a Drury Netchus 2-man are fine. But like honestly, I don't see myself prioritizing much in this game in my 1-3.
Yeah, nothing like having the optimal stack on Thursday with the number 2 optimal goalie and then having 2 bagels from the Dallas top line and 2 total shots on goal. That was absolutely brutal, but I don't have a lot of interest in Dallas. Like going up the Dallas top line, like the Dallas top line has not been good for a while now. I was looking at their numbers since January 1st, 2.4 expected goals, 2.6 actual goals per 60. Like those are basically league average. It's a league average line. Like that there was a reason why they moved Joe Pavelski off. It didn't go well against Ottawa clearly, but Jason Robertson and Rope Hintz have combined for 36 shots in their last 10 games. Like I'm pretty sure Nathan McKinnon has that in his last 5 games by himself. Like they are
maybe.
Yeah, like
I think he had 11 shots on goal his last game.
I think he has 21 shots in his last 2 games or something like that.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But anyways, like they're just not generating anything. And then you go into Carolina, which is absolute ground zero for never generating any offense. Like there are positively leveraged, like they're basically the same leverage as Ottawa. And I would 1,000,000% rather play Ottawa here tonight. So out on Dallas 1, Dallas 2, it's like losing like Matt Duchene is the guy that makes that line go. So having him there is fine. And Ty Dellandrea is having a decent season, but he's more of like a defensive guy than he will help create offense. I don't like he can't replace the goal scoring that Tyler Seguin is giving. And you're doing that in Carolina. Like I have no real interest in Dallas one-off stacking or otherwise. The Carolina side, I do have some interest in the top line. And the reason why I have interest in the top line is because they're not going to be playing against the Dallas top line. And the Dallas top line is the only one that I'm really worried about from a defensive perspective. And they're also going to miss a lot of that Harley Heiskanen pairing as well, because Harley and Heiskanen go out quite a bit with Pavelski and company. So yes, Aho, Svechnikov, and Fast not been great. Svechnikov, 46 shots in his last 22 games. Like a quarter season sample of him having like 2 shots per game is concerning. At least Aho shooting a little bit, 25 shots in his last 10 games, 2.5 per game. But it's a few things. They're going to get middle 6 matchups. Like I think Stankoven's a good player. I don't think he'll be able to match up against Aho and Svechnikov. And like Aho and Svechnikov and Fast, small sample, but they've been really good together, at least creating offensively, as most Carolina lines are. And there's no ownership. 0.7% ownership for Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov line. Like if that line's like 1% on an 8-game slate at home against Dallas, and a Dallas team, mind you, that has been giving up their fair share of goals as well, right? Like the goaltending has been up and down. Really hasn't been good for a while now. Dallas has given up at least 3 goals in 4 straight games or 5 straight games or something like that. And at 15,800, it's not like this line is a 20K line where you probably need like at 3 goals between them and maybe a shot bonus or hopefully a block bonus. Like 2 goals from this line is probably fine. The power play struggling a little bit, but it's generally been good this season. The Dallas penalty kill is getting a little bit better, but average at best. I like Carolina 1. If you want to play the deeper Carolina lines to fit with your Colorado or whatever, I think that's perfectly fine. But I think Carolina 1 going into that middle 6 from Dallas and avoiding that top line and avoiding the Haskin and Harley pairing for a fair bit is what I particularly am looking forward to in this game.
Yeah, I mean, they'll probably see some Etzel and Dell, but their 5-on-5 matchup, like the Dallas top line is by far the best one. Once you get to like Duchesne, that line's bad. Wyatt Johnson Ben has been awful defensively this year. So yeah, it does make some sense. The shot rate does worry me. Like Aho Svechnikov kind of remind me of Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, the type of 5-on-5 seasons they've having a little bit, but like one game they certainly can get there. And Ottinger has had his struggles this year. Anyway, speaking of struggles, Dan Vladar in net tonight. Calgary Flames with a 2.9 total. Heading into Edmonton, the Oilers have a 3.6. This is the third back-to-back of the season for Edmonton, which seems crazy. Edmonton went full Nuki pants on their lines yesterday, so we don't really know what their lines are going to be. I'm not sure it matters with Vladar in net. He's bad.
I mean, I should say it wasn't that bad until this midway through the third period, and that's when Fogle got the boot and all that.
Yeah, but like
warm up,
kicking Fogle off concerns me because usually when a coach would do that, you're going to see them load a line for the next game. You know what I mean? And that is going to be pricey if that's what it is, because Fogle was 3,700 last night. Nugent Hopkins, I think, is around 6K. Draisaitl's in the mid to high 7s. So, it's going to get like if you end up with Nugent Hopkins on the top line, that's going to be more expensive than Colorado 1. That's the issue. That being said, it is Vladar in net. Like Calgary's a good defensive team, but Vladar is just bad. He's just bad. It is what it is. And Edmonton has a 3.6 total. I'll just focus on the big boys there. If Fogle is on that top line, I will just full stack that top line. I like Fogle up there. It is what it is. Like, without knowing the lines right now, I'll tell you, I'll just focus on the big 4 names: McDavid, Hyman, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins. If Fogle's on the top line come warmups, and I have a swap ready or whatever I need ready, if that's where the path I'm going, I'll put Fogle in. I'll upgrade a defenseman, something like that. Or I'll just leave my Nugent Hopkins there. I don't know. On the other side, I know Edmonton's on a back-to-back, but like, I don't want to play the Sharon Govich, Huberdeau, Kuzmenko line. I think the Coleman back on Mangiapane line is fine. I honestly think, like, if I'm going to play a Calgary line, it's going to be Kadri Pospisil. Like, they've just been good. Like, they have been. Like,
it's just funny. Like, every time the Flames are on the slate, you just trash, like, half their lines, and you're like, screw it, I'm playing Kadri Pospisil again.
They play around, like, okay, besides Kadri plays, like, the most minutes on the team, but after that, like, Pospisil and Zari get, like, Winnipeg 2 ice time, and it drives me nuts because Zari has had an excellent season. So is Pospisil, really. Like, for the role he has on this team, he's been very good. They just need a couple more minutes, but they are 12-5. I think they're fine. Flames suck. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm at, like, here's the thing with Edmonton is, like, I think you're right. Like, if you stack McDavid, Hyman, and Fogle, and then we get to the game and it's McDavid, Hyman, Draisaitl, or McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, Draisaitl, then you're just kind of boned and you probably have to swap off. But I will say, if you're playing on DraftKings, that Edmonton top line with Fogle there is only $300 cheaper than the Minnesota top line that we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. So if they do something really weird with their lines and you manage to leave yourself $300 in salary on the table, there is a straight swap that you can make to a similar line elsewhere. So there are options if you don't have the right line combination. There are still 4 games on that late slate, right? So like there are 7 other teams that you can pick from. Nashville does have expensive stacks that you can get to as well. You could do like an O'Reilly, Forsberg, Yossi stack if you need to swap off Edmonton or something like that. So there are swaps you can make. That's the one thing I will say. I'll also say I wrote up Warren Fogle in the picks article, 16:45 and 18:54 in ice time. The last 2 games playing with Connor McDavid. Those are his highest ice time totals in the last 3 months. So like this isn't just a guy that they're sticking up there either. He's getting ice time. Like this isn't Connor Brown at the start of the season getting like 11 minutes or whatever. Like he is a part of this team. Like he's not, as important as McDavid or Draisaitl or Hyman or Bouchard. But I'd say outside the top power play guys, he's probably the next most important forward on the team. And they've definitely treated him like that in the last couple of games. He has 13 goals so far this season, tying his career high from last season of 13. He's done it in 13 fewer games. Like he's at 2.4 shots per game, I think. He even has 7 shot bonuses this season. This isn't a guy that gets power play time. So I really do like him on the top line as well. Like if that is a line, I would have absolutely no problem playing them, especially with Vladar in net. We kind of sometimes we just kind of make fun of goalies, I guess, a little bit too much. But you and I were talking before the show. We were looking at the goals saved above expected from Evolving Hockey for goaltenders this season. On a 60-minute basis, there's literally a 1.25 goals difference allowed above expected per game between Vladar and Markstrom, which means based off expected goals against metrics, having Markstrom in net saves the Flames a goal and a quarter as compared to when Dan Vladar is in net. It is one of the biggest drop-offs from starter to backup that you will see. I think it's the biggest drop-off, actually, that you will see in the league. It's not a reason to just completely swap off everything that you've already built and just go run to Edmonton, but it does make a pretty big difference not having to face Jacob Markstrom. I really, really do like Edmonton 1 here. As you said, there's not a whole lot of ownership coming in on them, 6.6%. You want to go down to Edmonton 2? I actually think that's fine. Like Vladar being in net will make Calgary's penalty kill itself worse. But the Calgary penalty kill, generally speaking, has been really, really good this season. Has been really good of late. They don't allow a lot of shots. They don't take a ton of penalties either. They're right around the league average, just a little bit above it. So the one thing that worries me is Edmonton hasn't been drawing power plays. Since January 1st, Edmonton is drawing the 3rd fewest minor penalties per game. I think we talked about this on Thursday. I have no idea how that team is drawing roughly the same amount of minor penalties per game as the San Jose goddamn Sharks. It feels like the referee. It almost seems like the referees feel bad for the opposition and just won't call penalties against the Oilers to give them power plays. But all that aside, it's a really good matchup with Vladar and net. So I really do like Edmonton 1. On the Calgary side, they said Andrei Kuzmenko is sick. He's not going to be playing. Jacob Pelletier's back in the lineup. He's going to take Kuzmenko's spot. It makes that line a little bit cheaper. It doesn't make me want to play them anymore, but it does make that line a little bit cheaper. The bigger question I have is who would take Kuzmenko's spot on the power play, right? Because Kadri was there. Zari's played there quite a bit this season. Like, you could get 2 out of the 3 guys from that Kadri Zari Pospisil line on the top power play if they decide to go back in that direction. So, as much as I make fun of you, I kind of got to agree with you. I think it's Kadri Zari Pospisil that I like on the Flames side. They're not coming in with all that much ownership. Either they have a higher top 2 stack than the old Kuzmenko line as well, which is really, really funny. 4.5%. Obviously, it's a lot higher than the top 2 stack percentage, but it's really not that bad for a filler stack. I do like the Kadri line as a filler type if you're playing, super. I think you can game stack this as well. Just want to say that. But if you want to play them with Colorado, Toronto, or anything like that, I think that's fine. But yeah, it's the Edmonton top line I like best in this game.
Yeah, whoever it is. Hopefully it's Fogle. I like Fogle. I love McLovin. There we go. Nashville Predators with a 3.5 total heading into San Jose. The goddamn Sharks have a 2.5 total. Why are people playing the Sharks without Hurdle? Okay. Like if
I mean, they
like
did
Granlund,
just score like 6 goals a few games ago. I know that's very uncommon for them, but they did.
yeah, and my broken clock is still right twice a day. But like Granlund, Zetterlund, Duclair, 2.7 top 2 stack percentage, 6.4% projected ownership. Like, I don't mind that line. But if you're going to give me them at 6.5%, I don't want anything to do with them. Like, if I'm going to go play a negatively leveraged line, I'm just going to go play Kadri, Zari, Pospisil. Like, I know Nashville struggles on the penalty kill, but like San Jose's power play doesn't have Hurdle, doesn't have Couture.
It doesn't have any upside either.
It doesn't have any upside. I don't even know who's running the point. Like, you know what I mean?
I
Like,
think I think in practice yesterday was Henry Thrun. So,
which is probably their best option, but it's Henry Thrun, which is a great name, by the way.
it is a good last name.
Yeah, he would be a great political figure in the 1700s.
Like, could you imagine like telling people your name's Hank Thrun? Like, I'd be kind of scared.
I might have to go. No, I'm not going to go do that. But I just like I know Granlund's having a good season at the beginning of the season. I'm like, I ain't fucking playing Granlund. Like, I think he's having a pretty good season considering how awful he was in Pittsburgh and how awful he was in Nashville last season. And yeah, okay, Granlund revenge. But like, yeah, whatever. 6.5% is no thank you. I'll rather save $300 and go play Kadri, Zari, Pospisil. Eklund and Hoffman, no. Like, I like Barabanov. Like, I like them too. But like Hoffman on that line, Hoffman looks like he'd rather be roller skating with like, I don't even know where I'm going with that. Like, he would rather be anywhere than playing hockey in San Jose right now. My interest is in the Nashville side. Nashville won 15.1% projected on our top 2 stacks, 17.9% projected ownership. That's not as negatively leveraged as I thought it was going to be. For that price, I do really like them. This was a night where I was kind of like, you know what? Nashville depth is in a really good matchup here, but they are so negatively leveraged. And Brunette is one of those coaches who just mixes and matches so much down there that it's hard to really pinpoint what you want to do. So I think you can one-off here. I think a one-off like Colton Sissons is fine. A one-off Tommy Novak, a one-off Luke Evangelista is fine. But like, I don't feel confident in saying like, oh yeah, you can definitely full stack Novak, Evangelista, Jankowski. That could be the line for 2 shifts. You know what I mean? So like, I'd be more, I forgot the word I was going to use, but I'd rather just use one-offs from the depth, like a Sissons, a Novak, Evangelista. But my favorite line in this game is Nashville 1, and it's not close.
Yeah, I mean, it is Nashville 1. I don't think we have to go a whole lot deeper into why they're a good matchup tonight against the Sharks. Like, I did write up Tommy. Thanks for mentioning Tommy Novak, by the way. I wrote up Tommy Novak in the picks article. San Jose calendar 2024 3.2 expected goals against per 60. No other team is lower than 3 or is higher than 3. So they're by far the worst. They've been by far the worst defensive team in the league. The top line just hasn't been good. 3.6 expected goals against, 3.1 actual goals against. Like there's nothing to worry about. The one thing that is a bit of a concern is like San Jose's penalty kill is not a pushover. It is like a mid-level penalty kill, which it's nothing elite. It's not like a Carolina or a Philly or anything like that. It's far below that, but it's definitely not like Columbus or Anaheim or something either. Like
That's the one thing they've had. Like even last year when they were terrible, they had a good penalty kill.
Yeah, so whoever's been running the PK, I mean, he probably should get a raise because he's the only one doing anything in that franchise since Erik Karlsson got traded. Yeah, I just don't have any interest in San Jose. Like you mentioned, all the other cheap lines, like Carolina 2, 11,900 less ownership. Like Ottawa 3, 12,100 less ownership. Seattle, we'll get to them in the next game. Like like about the same ownership. So like in a 2.5 total, I get why you'd want to go there, but it's not like it's a great power play matchup. Like Nashville doesn't take a ton of penalties. I just mentioned, making fun of Edmonton's lack of drawing power plays. Like San Jose is drawing less than that. They are 31st in the league for minor penalties drawn since January 1st. Like they don't get a lot of opportunities. So, yeah, I'm just out on the Sharks. Nashville won, obviously a perfectly fine play. I think Novak and Evangelista are a passable two-man. I don't have confidence that they're going to play the whole game together because Nashville does switch up quite a bit, but it does seem to be a duo that the team goes back to like more and more and more. And I'm going to be honest, if the Nashville lines have to get broken up here tonight because they're playing so poorly and getting ran out of the rink by San Jose, people are going to be losing their jobs. So I feel confident enough that Novak and Evangelista are going to stay together. 125 minutes together, 2.7 expected goals, 2.5 actual goals. It's about league average, but you don't need to be that much better than league average against this San Jose team. So I think there is at least a two-man from the Nashville depth that you can pick from that won't, they'll come in with, they'll be chalky, but nothing too bad, especially when you consider like the San Jose middle six is even worse defensively than the top line, and the top line sucks defensively.
This team just sucks. They should, like, if NHL wants to stop tanking, the bottom team should get relegated to like the KHL or something.
I mean, I've been saying it for years. Relegate the bottom two teams to the AHL and promote the top two teams, the teams that make the finals in the AHL, to the NHL, and then see how much tanking goes on, because this is absurd. Like at the end of every season, it's not even in the end of the season. Like by the time we get to the All-Star break, like 20% of the league is quit. It just sucks.
Yeah. But, Count Chocula doesn't really care. He just cares about, who the fuck that Gary Bettman is who I'm referring to. I don't know why I call him Count Chocula. Kind of looks like him. Maybe I'm thinking about cereal. I don't know. Anyway, I didn't get the chance to do my MMA video this week. My little fella had a really high fever Thursday and Friday. He's better now, but I didn't get a chance to do it. There still is a very good card locking tonight at 7 p.m. in Mexico City, 13 fights. If you are looking to, there's still time to register, and you can still get the MMA Sims. It is great. I think there's 42 cards all year, so it's not like it's every other weekend. It's pretty much every week. You can get a weekly, you can get monthly. You can check it out. I will have a video out next week. I promise. Pinky promise. And we will go from there. As again, thank you guys for the support through the affiliate link and the super chats and sharing the show, liking the show. Even if you talk crap about it, at least you're talking about it. So no publicity is bad publicity, as they say. I don't know who says that. They are kind of an idiot, but that's all right. Minnesota Wild with a 2.8 total heading into Seattle. The Kraken have a 3.2 total. I've been itching to say this about the Kraken for like a week now. I want to rename them the Obamas because they are uneventful, quiet, and just boringly good. I don't know. I just wanted to stir up some drama. I'm sure some people will be like, yeah, Obama and his 10 seats suck, but the Seattle Obamas. Don't worry about me. I've had a weird 3 days. Yes, I know. I like getting both sides upset. Like, it's easy to piss off one side. Getting both sides pissed off is the real treat. Anyway, Minnesota's back-to-back on the road. Kaprizov, Eriksson, Boldy, 21-9. Feels expensive, right? But they have a very high top two stack. 19.5% top two stack. 5.5% projected ownership. am at a conundrum here because that line has been very good. They beat Edmonton last night. That team has been very good defensively. There we go. I accomplished my mission. I think I'm in on Minnesota 1 here. They're fully correlated now. Seattle has a good penalty kill. They're generally good defensively, but this line has been very, very good. Eriksson Ek had a goal called back last night, but like he's pushing 30 goals already this season. I remember it was a while ago, but like it was a while ago where he would play like 12 minutes a night on the third line, and people in Minnesota were begging for him to get top line minutes. He's finally getting with Kaprizov and Boldy. They've been very good. I don't think I'm going to prioritize them in 1 to 3 because like in my single entry, like I don't think I could live with myself playing Minnesota over Colorado or Edmonton here tonight. But I think they're a sneaky good spend up option. On the flip side, Minnesota's penalty kill is terrible, but Seattle's power play is terrible. But that being said, I think I'm going right back to the Beniers, Eberle, McCann line, which is $600 more than San Jose won, and they're getting less ownership. This is another one of those lines I would rather play. Both top lines for me. I think the Tolvin and Gord Bjorkstrand line is fine, but I think if I'm going to play Seattle, it is the Beniers line.
Yeah, you're right on the top line. 185 minutes together for the Minnesota top line since John Hines was hired. 3.7 expected goals for, 6.5 actual goals for per 60. Now, obviously, they're riding a fairly hot shooting percentage. Thing is that they're generating so many shots and so much offense that even if they were shooting 10% as a line rather than 16%, they'd still be scoring 4 goals per 60 minutes, which is an elite total. Like there is a lot to like about them. And Seattle is good defensively, but they use the Wenberg line quite a bit in a shutdown matchup. And with Burakovsky and Schwartz on that line, they've been league average. 2.5 expected goals against per 60, 2.5 actual goals against per 60. They are perfectly correlated on the power play. Seattle doesn't take a lot of penalties. Yeah, Minnesota is drawing a lot of power plays, though. So maybe they can get a sneak out a few here tonight. But I kind of agree with what you said. Like, can I get to Minnesota in single entry rather than playing a 10% Colorado or 5 or 8 or 10% Edmonton? I don't know if I can get there. I think Minnesota 1 is perfectly fine. If I was 20 maxing here tonight, I would probably have 2 or 3 of them out of my 20 for sure. I just think at that price point, there are other spots I would rather go to. And then once you get further down the lineup, then I have less interest. The more interesting thing is what to do with the Seattle side, I think, because the Minnesota top line has been about average defensively, which I think makes sense. Like Joel Eriksson Ek is a great two-way forward, but they're a line that's being tasked with scoring goals. They probably have to take a few more chances offensively. So league average defensively is not that great. Second line, Zuccarello, Hartman, Johansson, league average defensively as well. Minnesota has been taking a fair amount of penalties, but Seattle doesn't draw a lot of power plays. But Seattle's top power play has been pretty good with Vinny Dunn running it. Remember in the first 20 games or whatever when they had Justin Schultz running the top power play unit for some reason? Well, mercifully that stopped. The top power play for Seattle has generally been very good for a couple months now. They don't get a lot of time because they still are splitting relatively splitting the power play units. But that power play with Wenberg, with I think it's McCann and Wenberg and Schwartz in them, has been really good. So McCann's the only guy on the top line on that power play. It's the second line that all skates together. That's why I think I kind of like the Wenberg line here, which feels weird to say because I don't ever like the Wenberg line. But they're going to get a lot of minutes against the Minnesota top line. Their power play unit has been the better one. The offense hasn't been great this season, but a lot of it is just a lack of finishing rather than a lack of creation. 2.8 expected goals for, only 1 actual goal. It's because they're shooting 3%. Like, I assume that 3% is going to rebound. They are coming in, very over leveraged, but I think they're a fine line that if you want to pair with the expensive Colorado and Toronto's and whatever else on the slate. But it is Minnesota one that's clearly heads and shoulders above everything else in this game.
Yeah. This was a night I wish I was 20 maxing, because I would be above the field with Minnesota one. I just the Sims are so easy to use, but Fantasy Cruncher to me is still like someone talking to me in Arabic. I just don't fully grasp it. I understand the basic meat and potatoes of it, but you can know hockey inside and out. To be successful MMEing, you have to understand the optimizer, and I don't fully understand it. So I don't want to waste my money doing it until I fully understand it. And starting it this late in the season seems like a task that I just don't want to take on. Anaheim Ducks with a 2.4 total heading into LA. The Kings have a 3.6 total. How dare you, Vegas? How dare you give the Ducks a 2.4 total against our Kings? That being said, it's probably justified. I will say 0.8% projected ownership for Vatrano, Terry McTavish kind of gets me going a little bit. I don't think I prioritize them in single entry, but that is a line that generally interests me, and they're coming in with almost no ownership. Obviously, the interest here is on the Kings side. Now, the Ducks take a nitrous metric ton of penalties. I don't particularly love these lines from a 5-on-5 standpoint. I understand Laferriere up there, he's a kind of a shot bot, and maybe that's fine for that line. Fiala on the second line is the only guy in the top power play unit. But, the Kings kind of split their units, you know what I mean? And then the third line, you get one guy in one unit, one guy in the other unit. Kind of sucks, but I think I like the Fiala more Dano line the best, and I'm clearly not alone. 8.7% top two stack, 15.6% projected ownership. With this much negative leverage, I'm almost tempted to say I'd rather play Nashville at negative leverage because it's not as bad. Or you can get different, you can leave Laferriere off the top line and put Fiala in for more power play correlation, something like that. I think Kings 3 is fine as a filler. I don't love this ownership on the Kings where they've had trouble scoring. Obviously, in a micro perspective, in one game, they can score 6 tonight easily. With the projected ownership, I don't love it. There are ways to get different within this game, which I think I'd be more inclined to do if I was playing Kings. From a 5-on-5 perspective, I don't love the ownership compared to how the lines are constituted. And then the Toronto Terry McTavish line would be the only line I consider on the Ducks, and I don't even think that's a 1-3 option for me.
I will say, other than Colorado or Edmonton or whatever, but that would obviously be getting extremely expensive. I think I don't mind a Kings power play stack here.
Right.
It's
split units, man. It's just the way they do their power plays makes me a little nervous.
Yeah. Kempe Kopitar on the top line, Fiala second line, Byfield third line, all on the power play together. So you're stacking across 3 lines. But you mentioned Anaheim's problem for taking penalties. They are taking the third most minor penalties per game since January 1st. They're still first in the league on the season as a whole. They're number 1 on the slate here tonight for most minor penalties. And what I mentioned in the picks article is that for all of Los Angeles' problems scoring at 5-on-5, since January 1st, the Kings are at 10.6 goals per 60 minutes in the league on the power play. That's 6th in the league. The top power play unit, the Kempe Kopitar Byfield Fiala unit, is at 13.9 goals per 60 in calendar 2024. That's Edmonton type stuff. The fact that they only get about 2/3 of the ice time, maybe less, kind of sucks. But they should get lots of opportunities here tonight. And with that ownership, I think it's a good way to get different, and it's not that expensive. Like it's nowhere near expensive as like power play stacking Edmonton or Toronto or something like that. They're the Anaheim penalty kill has given up over 1 power play goal against per game over their last 20 games. Like these guys just take too many penalties and they struggle to kill off the ones that they do take. The top Los Angeles power play is really good. I like an Los Angeles power play stack here. I agree with you. If I was going to stack an even strength line, it would be the Fiala to no more line. But I think I want to get as many members as a top power play unit as I can. So even if I did that, I think I would probably not have to, but be very inclined to include Drew Doughty in the stack because I want to get more guys from that top power play unit there. So I think it's a power play stack for the Kings that I would prefer here. Probably the Kings second line if I'm stacking an even strength stack. I think Kings 3 is fine, even if they're over leveraged. If you need a filler for Colorado or whatever, but it's power play stacking them that I think is the best idea here. Especially if you're playing, the big $5 or something like that to try to get a little bit different in a big field. I have no interest in the Anaheim side. It's just, the Kings, for as much as they're struggling, they don't give up a ton of goals against the penalty kill. The penalty kill is giving up shots, but the goaltending has generally been excellent. If you're 150 maxing, obviously I would get some of that Anaheim Troy Terry line or whatever, but I agree with you on 1 to 3. I don't think I'm stacking Anaheim.
So the positive for power play stacking across 3 lines for the Kings tonight, Fiala and Byfield are in good 5-on-5 matchups too.
Yeah.
So it's not like at times Seattle you'd have to stack across 4 lines, and that's just diabolical considering how bad their power play is. But 3 lines in a really good 5-on-5 matchup for everybody is fine. So I'm good with that. Coming up after us, nothing for the next few hours, but at 7 p.m. Eastern, NBA Live Before Lock with Greg Ehrenberg and our pal EMAC. It's also simulcast on Playback, so check that out. If you are playing NBA, you absolute psychos. God bless your souls, man. That is a grind. Maybe it's because I was up for almost 24 hours, but I just don't want to grind that daily. Let's talk a little bit about defensemen here. Top of the board, Makar, Yossi, Bouchard, Quinn Hughes, Morgan Riley, Shea Theodore. I think obviously the ones that stand out here, Makar, Yossi, and Yossi, really. I think guys that are playable are Bouchard, Riley, Theodore. Like, I'm not just saying that because Jake loves Shea Theodore. This is a pretty good spot for Shea Theodore. Like, again, we talked about it. Like, we're both confused at the Vegas total. If they're going to get 3.5 to 4 goals tonight, you have to assume Shea Theodore is going to be heavily involved in that kind of madness. So I'm fine with Shea Theodore. How do you like him?
Yeah, Makar and Yossi are the only ones that are really popping for me for the expensive guys. If you want to play Shea Theodore, I think Mackenzie Weegar is also fine. He's been back on the top Calgary power play unit. I think they're fine as well, like both top defensemen in that game, but it is Makar and Yossi. I wrote up Charlie McAvoy and Vince Dunn, both in the picks article. McAvoy for a couple reasons. One, obviously with Lindholm out, he's been having to play a lot more minutes. He's averaging at least 2 shots and 2 blocks per game this season, which is pretty good peripheral production. Add in the more minutes, and that's a bonus. Vancouver has been taking a lot more penalties, so I think McAvoy's certainly in play. Vinny Dunn, only 5K. Minnesota's penalty kill, still not good. As I said, Seattle's power play has been, at least his particular unit has been pretty good, so I don't mind Dunn either. I kind of prefer Pietrangelo to Theodore here today. Just because like I don't really have any interest in Vegas power play, and I think that'd be a big reason why I would play Shea Theodore is for power play, and I just don't have any interest in that here tonight. Jake Sanderson, obviously on the Ottawa side, at 4,600, he's still perfectly playable at his price. mid-price range or low price range. Sorry, Matthias Ekholm. He's always playable when Calgary's at home. Ryan McDonough, really good matchup with Nashville. Mason Lohrei was over 20 minutes for Boston in that last game. Seems like they didn't give that many minutes to Carlo. They just gave more to Lohrei. So if he's going to play 21 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, I think he's definitely playable. Jamie Alexiak for Seattle. He's typically the number 3 guy after Dunn and Larson, getting around 20 minutes since the All-Star break. Bowen Byram. He's looked better in the last couple games that I've watched from Colorado. He had a really tough, first 3 months of the season, basically. Don't mind him in a high-paced matchup against the Leafs. For mid-price guys, Los Angeles called up Jordan Spence. I didn't see any confirmation that he's actually playing. I assume he's going to play.
I think he is, because they said Mikey Anderson's week to week, but they're like, oh, we might have an update on him later.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, Jordan Spence, 2,500 then for sure. As we mentioned, Hank Thron, 2,600 running the San Jose power play. Declan Chisholm, 2,600 as well. And our boy, Oliver Shillington, 2,500, min-price Calgary. Not a bad matchup if he can actually get some decent minutes.
Yeah, Declan Chisholm, I don't know too much about him, but he's been playing the last 2 games, 18 and 20 minutes. And his peripherals have been pretty good. He's had back-to-back block bonuses. I don't know if he's historically a shooter or anything like that, but for 2,600, willing to find out.
Yeah, he was actually a guy that I know some Winnipeg writers were like, even though I think he's 24 years old now, they were hoping that Winnipeg would kind of just hang on to him because he might be like a late bloomer at like 26, 27, where they could get 5 pretty good years out of him. Maybe he just needed to change his scenery.
Well, you know how Winnipeg treats their defense prospects. Not very good. Goalies, our favorite part of the show. Kings goalie at the top of the board, 8,500. UC Saros in cash games is the one that sticks out at 8,400. I don't know if I'll get there in GPPs. I just don't know that the upside's going to be there. Stewie Skinner at 8,300. Again, fine, but like paying up just isn't my thing. Kochetkov, 8,200 is probably fine. Georgiev doesn't really interest me too much here. It's going down. Like, I don't mind whoever's starting for Boston. I always forget whose turn in the rotation it is, but they're the same price. So whoever between Olmark and Swayman is fine. There aren't many confirmed. You know what I mean? Whoever starts for Vegas, I like. I hope it's Aiden Hill.
It's Thompson.
It's Thompson. Thompson's fine. I know. Jake Ottinger's been bad, but he's been bad at 8K. He's 7,200 tonight in Carolina. You take away the name, you take away the struggles, you play goalies against Carolina if you're down in that range. I think Capo Kakinen's fine. And whoever's starting for for Anaheim, whether it's Gibson or Dostal at 6,900, I'll have some interest in. Kings are a very high volume team. And when you get under 7K, volume is king.
Yeah, I wrote up Aiden Hill in the picks article. Obviously, Logan Thompson starting now. Hill's had the better season, but Thompson's still not a bad goalie. I don't mind him in that matchup against Ottawa. Jake Ottinger, I agree with you. Anybody against Carolina is always playable. Capo Kakinen for San Jose. Nashville's the better team. Nashville should win this game. That doesn't mean Kakinen can't save 39 out of 42 shots or something like that, right? Or 39 out of 43. Even in a loss. So definitely don't mind him at 7K. He's even projecting in double digits on Stochastic, which you rarely see for the 7K and under goalies. Usually they're projected at 8 or 9 DK points. I'm pretty sure he's over 10. So don't mind Kakinen as well. Not a whole lot else sticking out to me other than that. I will mention, I think Joey Decord is playable because Seattle doesn't take a lot of penalties. If they only take one penalty here tonight, Minnesota has to play the whole game at 5-on-5. It's not a bad gig for Decord. He's the one expensive goalie I have targeted. But it's basically Thompson, Ottinger, and Kakinen that are sticking out to me.
Mm-hmm. I listen, again, with goalies, if you have a guy, you play that guy. Like Tyler says, I'm slam down.
Do want to mention, I was looking for some Kings tweets, found one. it took, let's see, how many games have the Los Angeles Kings played so far this season? They're up to 55 games. It took 55 games, but they're finally playing one of their right-handed defensemen on the left side. And it's Brandt Clark, the guy that's played like 8 NHL games, is the first one to play on the left side this season. I mean, hey, I'm a happy guy. This is something they needed to do 2 months ago. But it's really weird that they're using a rookie with like 8 games experience or whatever on his offside. He's playing with Matt Roy.
Why didn't they just move Roy over there? Never mind.
Hey, listen. We got Brandt Clark and we got Jordan Spence in the same lineup. Just let's go with it.
Andreas Englund, anyone? He might play 20 minutes because, like, you know, they're going to play Brandt Clark, his 14. Like, yeah. Englund.
Spence might only get 10 if he's not on the power play.
Ooh, okay.
Hat trick picks.
Woosah, Captain. Remember your pressure points, Cap. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
I hope he's back on the top line. I just want to do it because it seems like there's actually a reasonable opportunity for it to happen. I'm going with McLovin, Warren Fogle.
There you go. I'm going with we're a bunch of degens here, right? Going Shane Pinto for the gambling guy. We're going gambling here with Shane Pinto.
Fair enough. I mean, it's appropriate, I guess.
Yeah. We will be back. There's 4 games on Monday, but it's probably going to be Tuesday. Yeah. NHL weird schedule next week.
I think next week is back to their typical 4, 12, 3, 21, whatever.
Yeah, there's 12 games on Tuesday, 14 on Thursday. There's 2 on Wednesday.
Yeah. So Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday next week.
Yeah. So good luck, everybody. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Even though I had a bit of a wild one. It's Saturday. It happens. I love you all. Good luck, everybody. Hope you win money. And we'll see you on Tuesday.
God, we need to get out of here.